Native Land is a production of iHeart Radio in partnership with Reason Choice Media.
Welcome
to our MiniPod. You guys heard us on the last episode talking about when you're in debate or when you're presenting your position, are you trying to convince someone or are you just having conversation? So we're going to do a really quick one on this because I think it's a good topic and it was Angela's idea. So let's talk about it.
It came from something you said. Can we do a wrap around?
Yes, let's do it.
Who in here tries to convince people of their position? Raise your hand.
Not me. Both y'all? Really? That's interesting.
Okay,
so
Andrew,
for the people listening, Angela and Andrew are raising their hands.
Yeah, that's true. Sorry.
I think again, this is one I'm trying to disassociate myself from, the convincing part. Okay. But I think I still argue with the idea of winning people to my perspective. Yeah. I think otherwise, what's the point? I definitely don't want to be heard that much for the point of just wasting the space. So I do think when I argue, I do think I argue with the intent of bringing more people to my point of view, the way I see things and that kind of thing. But I will tell you, there are conversations that are had where it really is just about understanding better where somebody is and maybe letting them understand my perspective better, but not moving them necessarily to my side. So, but I put that in the range of like conversation, and then I put debate and argument in a different category. What about you, Angela?
Yikes. As soon as you said that, I'm like, oh, I really do have a problem here. I think that I'm always trying
every aspect of your life.
No, I'm not debating either, but just like I think it comes from two places. One is I do think that I want to feel heard, but more than feeling heard, I want to feel understood. And so I don't know that I'm trying to convince people to think like me as much as I am trying to convince them to understand my perspective. So one of the things my mom has always said to me is one of the greatest skills we can learn in life is perspective taking. And so I think that I have honestly spent more time trying to give my perspective and get empathy, support, understanding for that than I have placed the same energy in doing that for other people, which is why my mom has probably repeated that to me tons and tons of times. So I need to work on that part of it. But I do also, I'm competitive and I do like to win a debate as well, even if it means meowing in the debate. So I think it's both. I think it's both.
It's interesting.
I want to hear too.
I don't experience either of you that way. I say,
really?
Yeah. I say for me, I'm never trying to convince anybody. It's I just don't have space in my spirit for that. And I also consider when that is happening, there's some level of intellectual violence there. If I'm telling you this is how I feel, like I would say what you said, Angela, that's all I ever ask, to be understood. If you understand me and you disagree, we Gucci. It's okay. You don't have to agree with me. If you have allowed me the space, if we've had a healthy exchange of ideas and ideology, I'm good with that. I have an endless, insatiable thirst to learn, to understand things. That's really all it's ever about for me. If I've learned something, I want to share it. When people try to convince me of something, I can't lie. Like, it starts to bother me, because it's if I'm saying, now if I'm neutral and you're like, oh, let me pull you to my side, maybe. But if I've said, this is how I feel, and then somebody else is trying to say, no, like, this is your position on this is wrong. It's like, okay, I hear you. But then I've moved on. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but I don't like it. Yeah. Because you cannot convince me of something that I don't believe in, or that I believe to be false, or I believe to be wrong. Andrew, you and I have had conversations where, you guys have seen Andrew throw shade, but we'll be talking and I'll say, well, Andrew, this is my perspective. And I'll go on and on and on and on about something. And Andrew is very thoughtful. He's like, how incredibly one-dimensional. And that's like...
No. Have you said that, AG?
That's a verbatim quote. That is a verbatim quote.
Oh, yes. Jesus, Lord, help us today.
But I don't experience you trying to convince me. And I'm just like, well, wait, what do you mean?
I don't think I do when I understand a person's position. Like if they're like, you've stated where you are. I think my debating is more in the space where there is room for conversion. Like, and then if there isn't room for conversion, I will tell you what I've defaulted to, which is it possible that a person could reasonably think this? Like, is the question I would posit to someone like, all right, so that I can make sure that I'm not out of space. Is it possible, is it reasonable to conclude that a person might think this, might have a reason to conclude that based off of what the interaction has been? And if I can get you to say, yeah, I think that's possible without cutting me in the next verse, then I'm like, okay, that's cool. Then we can sit there. But if I'm still looking at you and you're looking at me like I'm an out of spacer, like, okay, it just doesn't have a logical landing for me. Then that becomes hard because I keep going until like it seems like it's logical that a person could conclude that. But if you think that I'm here in outer space and that there's no reason for me to have arrived at what I have arrived at by way of conclusion, then F you out of space.
Well, here's my question. Do you guys think this is one place where I feel like we run up against this ideology like as a point of tension for us often on the pod? There are moments where I feel like Tiff is like, well, I don't know why they're going to get the undecided voters. Like these people, if they still undecided, they have decided. And I'm like, bitch, how we gonna win an election if she don't convince some of these undecideds? So I think one of the places where I see that made manifest the most is when we're having the conversation about how they grow a base or convince an electorate that this is the right side of the issue. Because if you don't grow your coalition, there's only so many votes you can count. That's limited. So then what do you do if you're not convincing anybody to come along with you?
Well, it's
like,
not,
it is what it is at this point.
I don't believe there are that many undecided voters. So I think we're already in disagreement at the premise of it. I think if you're undecided at this point, you're giving yourself permission to vote for Trump, or you're trying to find a reason to vote for Vice President Harris. And I think the reason why those things exist are rooted in racism and misogyny. Every single panel I've seen, and I personally don't know how, and nor am I interested in meeting a bigot in the middle or trying to convince a bigot anything about me, my humanity, this democracy, this election. I have found it to be an exercise in futility. Now, there was a version of me who liked to debate. You know, in 2018, 2019, when I first started doing television, I used to engage in these debates. And I'll tell you, I don't have the energy for it anymore. It's just not, it's not worth my time to be like, maybe somebody else can do it, but I don't want to do that. I don't even like preaching to the choir. You know, a lot of the times we're talking to our audience, they know a lot of the things we're saying.
I've tried to cackling right now. I want to know why is he?
Because I think this is so emblematic. I think this is so us. I think it's so true. Everything Tiffany's saying is predictable. As far as I'm concerned, like she ain't having it.
So rude.
With a lot of that.
No, he doesn't mean it that way. He just means
I don't mean it to be dismissive.
You're
I
consistent.
Just know
He's saying you're consistent.
The one-dimensional is one-dimensional.
So
that's
Andrew,
not the one-dimensional part.
As the one person here who's run for office, and we know this is actually where this surfaces for us, I think most often, because I'm like, Tiff, you cannot win an election like that.
You are
like,
a convincer. Angela, you try to convince, for sure.
You are a convincer.
Okay, Andrew. So as the resident run for officer here.
Yeah.
What, like, how do you grow a base if you're not convincing nobody?
Well, a part of it, we have to suspend with our own beliefs about some things in order to grow a base. Because if we approach every person with the assumptions around why it is they are where they are on this thing, there's no hope with it. And so even though I sometimes enter a conversation with a strong belief about where I think somebody might land, I have to be willing at some level to say, you know what words that come out of their mouth, some of it has to be believable. Like at some point, something in them is still telling them like, I'm on fence about this. Mm-hmm. And maybe if you're on fence about it, then there has to be a way off the fence. Can I present to you a picture that lets you off the fence? And I think for most people, a way off the fence is by not making me feel stupid, not making me feel like I am problematic because I was on the fence to begin with.
That's good.
But a lot, even if I felt that at some level, that I've got to give them a ramp off because nobody wants to be humiliated and nobody wants to be browbeat to the position that they're in.
That's
they
good.
want to get there, or they want to feel like they have gotten there through their own sovereignty. That I own me and I own the way I get to decide. And that takes a little bit more patience, and it requires a suspension of our own beliefs sometimes.
And judgment, probably. Suspending judgment,
I got
too.
judgment and frustration. I think when it comes to local politics, that's different, or primaries. But when it comes to this election, I have all the things you said we shouldn't have for undecided voters. If you on the fence about in this election, I don't have the patience, the time, the desire, none of that. That's somebody else's ministry.
And Tiff,
that
you've
ain't my
gotten
ministry.
there honestly. You've gotten there honestly. A lot of us have gotten there honestly. It's because we've watched these people turn themselves into pretzels trying to be undecided. When you're like, we know what this is at the end of the day. And I guess the part I'm saying is that even if I feel like I know what this is at the end of the day, I may not tell you that I think that you're an unwinnable and hopeless case. We're going to give you a way off at some level. And I hope you take it.
I like everything you said until the end, because to me, it felt like there was something about it that if I feel like I can't convince, then I have lost hope. I'm not talking about somebody that's just like, you talked about pretzels. I hate pretzels. You're not going to convince me to like pretzels. It's pointless.
Exactly.
But that's a completely different thing than, someone who's like, well, I just don't understand why I got to pay reparations if I didn't do the thing, right? I think that I could convince you. You don't know what I'm going to say. I think I
No. My point, I just wanted you to say, I was responding to this moment, which was these Trump voters, these folks who are right now in an
I was going to
undecided
get there. I was going to get there. That maybe you just don't know. So I feel like the convincing is because you need to be educated. And I don't want to do it, to your point, in a browbeating, judgmental, super hypercritical or way to humiliate them. But I do want to be like, well, can you help me explain this? Like, we did this interview on Breakfast Club with Byron Donalds, and he was getting like dragged for this Jim Crow comment he made, which I thought was ridiculous. Like, you wouldn't have been able to marry your wife in Jim Crow, right? So, but I was like, well, can you explain what you meant? Now, he explained it, and I was like, okay, that position I actually understand, and part of it I agree with. But at the end of the interview, he says, "Make America Great Again." I was like, so back to Jim Crow we go, huh? We just go right on back to Jim Crow.
He's a useful idiot.
Thank you.
That's
definitely not somebody I have any desire.
I agree with that. But to me, I had to go through the exercise of seeing where your logic led you. Or maybe it's not your logic. Maybe it's your shorter end of the line. Or maybe it's not your shorter than the line. Maybe it's your opportunism. I don't know. But I wanted to hear it all out for myself.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think I've heard it all for myself.
Example.
I think that's part of the challenge.
It all before.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, I grew up in Atlanta. I know how Southern white folks think. I was born in Ohio. I know how Midwestern white folks think. I don't have that kind of curiosity. And for self-hating Black people, I definitely don't have no curiosity.
Well, we got to convince some of them.
So we are where we are.
On that note,
I think
we got to convince Nick to let us go a minute longer. He said, "Rap, we got to go."
All right. Well, I guess we're out.
I got 0 moments left for any of this.
I want to talk about this some more, especially at the end of this election. Hopefully the outcome is what we want it to be. And we can talk about who she ended up convincing. We can maybe see that in exit polling data.
I love it.
After she wins. 5 seconds from now. Yeah, hopefully.
All right. Thank you guys for tuning into this mini pod. Be sure to leave us a review, and tell your friends. We drop mini pods every Monday. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you back here next Thursday.
Native Land Pod is a production of iHeartRadio in partnership with Reason Choice Media. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.